They said an Omega without a pack didn't last a winter. When Era Coldwell was driven past the boundary stones with nothing but the clothes on her back, no one expected her to see spring. The cold would handle it. The wilderness always did, but Era didn't die. She survived in a decaying cabin on the edge of nowhere, chopping wood until her hands bled, checking traps in waist-deep snow, living so quietly the forest almost forgot she existed, until the night she found him, a wolf pup, broken, starving, barely breathing under her porch. She fed him her last scraps of venison, and wrapped him in the scarf she'd been saving for emergencies. She named him Milo, and whispered her secrets to him in the dark. She thought she was just keeping a wounded animal alive. She had no idea she was nursing the most dangerous alpha in the north back to health. Because when 6 black wolves arrived in armored SUVs and surrounded her cabin, they didn't come to kill her. They came to kneel. Hey, quick question, how are you feeling right now? Thank you so much for being here. It really means the world to me. I'm working toward 1,000 subscribers. And if this story is already pulling at your heart, please hit that subscribe button for Liana's Moonshadow smash the like, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Alright, thank you. Now let's get back to the story. The isolation of the frozen borderlands changes a person. It strips away everything soft, everything civilized, and leaves nothing but the sound of your own heartbeat and the howl of wind through dead trees. Era Coldwell had once been someone, the daughter of Garrick Donnell, a respected beta of the Greyvale Pack. She'd grown up in warmth, in community, surrounded by wolves who called her by name. Now she was a ghost. A rejected Omega living in a trapper's cabin so old the walls groaned when the wind picked up. The roof leaked. The stove barely worked. But it was hers. Her crime? She'd refused Cyrus Wraithborn. The Alpha's son, entitled, cruel, a man who thought his bloodline meant ownership. He hadn't taken rejection well. A few stolen heirlooms planted in her room. Falsified records showing missing pack funds. Whispers that spread like poison. Celine Haraway, Cyrus's mother, had smiled when the accusations came. A cold, satisfied smile that told Era everything she needed to know. Her own father had looked at her with disgust. Leave, Era, Garrick had said, his voice void of emotion. Before I forget you were ever my daughter. So she left. Life in the borderlands was a brutal loop. Chop wood, check traps, melt snow for water, sleep with one eye open. It was lonely. But it was peaceful, until late November, when the frost turned vicious and the creek froze solid. Era was checking a rabbit snare near the frozen water when she heard it. A whine, high-pitched, desperate, barely audible over the wind. She followed the sound to a hollowed-out log half buried in snow. Inside, curled into a tight, shivering ball of muddy fur, was a wolf pup. He was a wreck, ribs visible through matted fur, one ear torn and bleeding, his back leg bent at an unnatural angle. He looked like a runt discarded by a cruel pack. Era knew that feeling. Hey there, little guy, she whispered, kneeling in the snow. The pup snapped at her, baring tiny needle-sharp teeth. His eyes were a startling shade of violet, unusual but not unheard of in high-lineage shifters. But this wasn't a shifter. He didn't carry the scent of a human soul. Just pine, dried blood, and wet fur. A regular wolf. I'm not going to hurt you, she said softly, pulling a piece of dried venison from her pocket. It was her lunch, but he needed it more. She tossed it to him. He devoured it in one bite and stared at her, waiting. That's all I've got, buddy. She looked at his twisted leg. He wouldn't survive the night out here. She knew the rule. Don't interfere with nature. But looking at him, broken and alone, she saw herself. She took off her scarf, wrapped him up despite his growls, and carried him back to the cabin. She named him Milo. Over the next 2 months, Milo became her shadow. Era splinted his leg using sticks and strips of an old flannel shirt. She shared her meager stews with him. She talked to him constantly, filling the suffocating silence. You know, Cyrus was an idiot, she told him one evening by the fire. Milo paused mid-chew on a deer bone, looking up at her with those intense violet eyes. He thought because he was the future alpha, he owned me. But I'd rather freeze out here than be a trophy in a gilded cage. Milo huffed, a sound suspiciously close to agreement, and hobbled over to rest his head on her knee. You get it, don't you? She scratched behind his ears. Us rejects have to stick together. He grew fast, unnaturally fast. By January, his leg had healed completely, and he was the size of a full-grown timber wolf. His coat, once muddy and matted, came in thick and lustrous, a strange, shimmering silver gray. But there were oddities. He never barked, never marked territory. And sometimes Era would wake in the middle of the night to find him sitting by the window, staring at the tree line with military precision. He wasn't watching for prey. He was keeping watch. Era ignored the signs. She was just happy to have a friend. Then came the Tuesday that shattered everything. It was a gray morning, the air heavy and charged with static electricity. Milo was agitated. He refused breakfast, pacing the length of the cabin with low growls rumbling in his chest. "Milo, settle down," Era scolded, pulling on her boots. "I need to check the perimeter." He blocked the door, hackles raised, teeth bared, not at the outside, at her. "Move," she commanded, using a hint of her Omega authority. Animals usually listened. He didn't budge. Instead, he pushed her back with his snout, hard. "What is wrong with?" She heard it, the crunch of tires on snow. Her cabin was miles off any main road. No one came here, ever. Era ran to the window, her heart slamming against her ribs. Coming up the winding trail were 4 vehicles, not rusted hunter trucks. Matte black Range Rovers with tinted windows and reinforced bumpers. War machines. They stopped in the clearing 20 yards from her porch. "Hunters," she whispered, panic rising. Milo let out a snarl that shook the floorboards, but he wasn't looking at the vehicles with fear. He was looking at them with recognition. The doors opened in perfect unison. 4 men stepped out. Massive. Even from this distance, Era could feel their aura pressing against her like a physical weight. Werewolves. Powerful ones. They wore tactical gear, dark gray combat pants, black sweaters, heavy boots. They moved with synchronized precision, not speaking, communicating through glances alone. Then they shifted. Bones snapped and reshaped in seconds. Where 4 men had stood, 4 massive wolves now prowled. But these weren't ordinary wolves. They were onyx wolves, pitch black fur, eyes like molten gold, easily twice the size of normal wolves. In the werewolf world, black wolves were rare, bred for one purpose, lethality. They were executioners, and they were circling her cabin. Era backed away from the window, grabbing the fire poker. It was useless against shifters of that caliber, but it was all she had. "Milo," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Hide. Get under the bed." Milo didn't hide. He walked to the center of the room and sat down, facing the door. He looked regal. Thud. A heavy paw struck the front door. Thud. "Open the door, Era Coldwell." A voice boomed from outside. Deep. Commanding. One of them had shifted back. "We know you have him." Her blood ran cold. Him? Did they mean the pup? Was Milo stolen property? A pet of some high-ranking alpha? "I don't know who you are," she yelled back, gripping the poker until her knuckles turned white. "Leave us alone." "We aren't leaving," the voice replied, rough and gravelly. "Hand over the asset and your death will be painless. Resist, and we burn this cabin to the ground." Era looked at Milo. He looked back at her, his violet eyes calm, almost apologetic. "I won't let them take you," she told him, tears stinging her eyes. "I saved you. I'm not letting you go." She wasn't a warrior. She was a rejected Omega, with no pack, no training, no power, but she had fed this pup, healed him. He was her family. Era marched to the door and threw the bolt. If she was going to die, she'd die on her feet. She swung the door open. Cold air rushed in like a slap. Standing on her porch was a man who looked carved from granite, shirtless despite the freezing temperature, steam rising from his skin. Behind him, the 3 giant black wolves snarled, jaws snapping. "Where is he?" the man demanded. "It's just a dog," Era screamed, standing in the doorway. "He's just a stray I found dying in the woods. Go away." The man stepped forward, his hand raising to strike her aside. "Don't touch her." The voice didn't come from the man on the porch. It came from behind her. It was a voice Era had never heard before, yet it vibrated in her very bones. Deep, baritone, dripping with absolute power. A voice of command. Era froze. The man on the porch froze. The black wolves stopped growling and lowered their heads. Whining softly, she turned around slowly. Milo was gone. Standing in the center of her living room was a man. Tall, taller than the executioner on the porch. Messy silver-gray hair that fell over his eyes. Stark naked, his body a map of lean muscle and scars. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Violet. The man who had been her dog for 2 months looked at the terrifying soldiers outside, then down at her. "Hello, Era," he said softly. He walked past her, stepping onto the porch. The cold didn't seem to bother him. The executioner on the porch immediately dropped to one knee. Bowing his head so low, his forehead almost touched the icy wood. The 3 black wolves whined and belly crawled into the snow, exposing their throats in submission. The man Milo looked at them with cold indifference. "I believe," he said, his voice echoing through the clearing. "You threatened my mate." The silence was crushing. Era stood paralyzed in the doorway, the fire poker slipping from her numb fingers and clattering onto the floor. Her brain was trying to process the impossible. The pup she had nursed back to health, the one she had baby talked to, the one who chased snowballs, was a man. And not just a man, a mate. He'd called her his mate. "My mate?" she stammered, the words foreign on her tongue. "Milo, no." Not Milo didn't turn back to her yet. He was staring down the man kneeling before him. The kneeling man was trembling. A seasoned warrior, shaking like a leaf. "Lord Evander," the kneeling man choked out. We did not know. The tracker spell only showed your location. We thought you were being held captive by a rogue, Lord Evander." The name hit Era like a physical blow. She staggered back, gripping the doorframe. Everyone in the shifter world knew the name Evander Crownheart. He was the Alpha Prime of the Onyx Dominion, the largest, most lethal pack in the Northern Hemisphere. They were the pack that other Alphas hired to end wars. Evander was a legend. They called him the Wolf Eater. Rumors said he'd been missing for 3 months, presumed dead after a coup attempt, and she'd been feeding him leftover rabbit stew. "Captive," Evander repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. He took a step forward. "Do I look like a captive, Commander Brock?" "No, Alpha. You look restored." "Restored," Evander echoed. He finally turned to look at her. The softness in his eyes was disarming, clashing violently with the terrifying aura radiating off him. He reached out a hand. Era flinched. He paused, a flash of pain crossing his face. "I'm not going to hurt you, Era. I told you that the first day you found me. You were a wolf," she whispered accusingly. "You tricked me. I was stuck," he said, his expression grim. "The poison they used on me locked me in my shift. It broke my connection to my human form. I was dying, Era. My wolf was fading. Until you." He stepped closer. The heat radiating off him was immense. He gently took the scarf from around her neck, the same scarf she'd wrapped him in that first day, and draped it over his own shoulders to cover himself. "You fed me. You healed me," he murmured, his thumb brushing her cheek. "And your scent, it anchored me. It brought me back." He turned back to the soldiers. The softness vanished instantly. "Give me a coat." Commander Brock scrambled up, stripping off his tactical jacket and handing it over with averted eyes. Evander shrugged it on. It was tight across his shoulders. "Who sent you?" Evander asked. "Your brother," Brock replied. "Dexton Vale. He's declared himself Alpha in your absence. He sent us to confirm your death." Evander let out a dark, humorless laugh. Of course he did. He looked at the 3 black wolves still groveling in the snow. "Rise." They shifted back. 3 men, naked and shivering, stood with their heads bowed. "We are yours to command, Alpha," one of them said. "We serve the blood, not Dexton. We thought you were dead." "You will serve me," Evander agreed. "And your first order is to secure the perimeter. No one gets within 5 miles of this cabin." "Sir." Brock hesitated, glancing at Era. "We cannot stay here. Dexton has trackers sweeping the sector. If he finds out you're alive, he'll send heavy artillery. We need to move. We need to get you to the safe house in Seattle." Evander looked at Era, weighing his options. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she said, finding her voice. "This is my home. You can go. Go be a king or whatever you are. Leave me out of it." Evander's eyes narrowed. He stepped into her personal space, forcing her to look up at him. The bond, that electric, magnetic pull that exists between fated mates, flared so hard her knees went weak. "I am not leaving you," he said firmly. "You are my mate. Where I go, you go." "I didn't agree to this," she argued. "I'm an exile. I'm an Omega. I can't be the mate of an Alpha Prime." "You are whatever I say you are," Evander growled, a hint of his wolf surfacing. "And you are mine." Suddenly, the radio in one of the Range Rovers crackled to life. "Team 1 report. Have you located the target?" "Over." Brock looked at Evander. Fear in his eyes. "That's Dexton's personal guard." Evander snatched the radio from the vehicle's dashboard and pressed the button. "Hello, brother," he purred into the mic. Silence on the other end. Then a shaky breath. "Evander, impossible. I'm coming for you, Dexton," Evander promised. "And I'm bringing hell with me." He crushed the radio in his hand. Plastic and metal shattered. He turned to Era, extending his hand again. Era, pack a bag. We have 10 minutes before they airstrike this location. Airstrike? She shrieked. Dexton doesn't take chances, Evander said calmly. He grabbed her shoulders. I know you're scared. I know this is a lot. But I swore to myself when I was lying on that rug by your fire, if I ever got my skin back, I would spend the rest of my life repaying you. I will protect you. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Era looked at the cabin, her safe haven for 3 years. Then she looked at the woods, where death was undoubtedly approaching. Finally, she looked at Evander, the man who had listened to her secrets, who had watched her cry over her lost family. He knew her. He really knew her. 10 minutes, she whispered. Good girl, he smiled, and for a second, she saw the playful pup she'd grown to love. Era ran inside, grabbing her mother's locket, a few changes of clothes, and the hunting knife her father had given her before he'd stopped being her father. When she came back out, the 4 SUVs were idling, engines rumbling like caged beasts. Evander was waiting by the lead car. He opened the door for her. As Ira climbed in, she looked back at the cabin one last time. Don't worry, Evander said, sliding in beside her, his thigh pressed against hers, solid and warm. I'll build you a better one. I liked that one, she muttered. I know, he said softly. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. Sleep, Era. It's a long drive to the border. She didn't think she could sleep. Her adrenaline was spiking, her heart racing. But Evander let out a low, rhythmic purr from his chest, a sound he used to make as a pup to help her calm down after nightmares. The sound vibrated through the car seat, sinking into her bones. Her eyelids grew heavy. The last thing she saw before drifting off was Evander's violet eyes watching the road, burning with a terrifying promise of vengeance. The explosion didn't sound like a bang. It felt like a punch to the chest. They were maybe 3 miles down the mountain road when the sky behind them lit up in a blinding flash of orange. The ground shook, vibrating through the tires. Era whipped her head around just in time to see a column of black smoke rising above the tree line. Right where her cabin had stood moments ago, her breath hitched. My books. My mother's pictures. I'm sorry, Evander said, his voice rough. He didn't look back. His eyes were glued to the rearview mirror, scanning for threats. Material things can be replaced, Era. You cannot. You don't understand, she snapped, shock turning into sudden, sharp anger. That wasn't just wood and stone. That was my freedom. That was the only place in the world where no one looked at me like I was garbage. And now it's gone because of you. The car went silent. Commander Brock's grip on the wheel tightened. His eyes widened in the rearview mirror. Likely terrified she'd just insulted the Alpha Prime, but Evander didn't get angry. He reached across the console and took her hand again. His grip was iron, possessive, yet careful not to crush her fingers. You're right, he said. It is my fault, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to hide in a rotting cabin again. You aren't a rogue anymore, Era. You are the alpha female of the Onyx Dominion. I'm an Omega, she corrected, pulling her hand away. The Greyveil pack threw me out because I wasn't strong enough. I can't fight. I can't command. I'm just me. Evander turned his head slowly. The violet in his eyes swirled, darkening. You fed a wild wolf from your own plate when you were starving. You stood between 4 Onyx executioners and a crippled pup with nothing but a fire poker. Do not tell me you are weak. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit, Era. It's about how much you can endure. And you are the strongest wolf I have ever met. Era looked away, flushing. It was hard to argue with him when he looked at her like she was the center of his universe. If you're still here, feeling every word of this story, then you know what comes next is going to wreck you. Please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I'm pouring my heart into these stories, and your support keeps me going. Drop a like, leave a comment, and let me know what you think of Ira and Evander so far. Thank you. Now, let's keep going. The drive was grueling. They bypassed the highways, sticking to old logging roads to avoid Dexton's patrols. The silence in the car was filled with the crackle of encrypted radio chatter. Brock and the other guards spoke in codes. Eagle is circling. Sector 4 is compromised. It became clear that Evander's brother had locked down the entire state. Night fell, heavy and dark. We need to stop, Evander announced suddenly. Brock frowned. Sir, the safe house is only 4 hours away. We should push through. Era is shivering, Evander noted. And I need to feed. My wolf is burning through calories trying to maintain this human form after months of suppression. If I don't eat soon, I'll go feral. Brock nodded immediately, fear flashing in his eyes. Understood. There's a motel 2 miles ahead, off the grid. We can secure it. The motel was a decrepit roadside relic that looked like it hadn't seen guests in years. Perfect. Brock and his team swept the building while Evander helped Era out of the SUV. Her legs were stiff from sitting for hours. Evander kept a hand on her lower back, guiding her inside. The room they were given was sparse. 1 bed, a flickering lamp, peeling wallpaper, but it was warm. Evander locked the door behind them and turned to face her. For the first time since the transformation, they were truly alone. Era stood awkwardly in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself. You should rest, Evander said, his voice softer now. I'm not tired. You're exhausted. I'm angry, she corrected. He tilted his head, studying her. At me? At everything. She turned away, staring at the ugly floral wallpaper. I spent 3 years convincing myself I didn't need anyone, that I was better off alone, and then you showed up. And now, she trailed off, unable to finish. Evander moved closer, silent as a predator. Now what? He asked quietly. Now I'm terrified, she admitted, her voice breaking. Because I care about you. And caring about people only ever gets me hurt. Evander's hand slid around her waist, pulling her back against him. She could feel the solid heat of him, the steady thrum of his heartbeat. I know what it's like to be betrayed, he murmured against her hair. My own brother poisoned me, left me to die in the woods like an animal. But you found me, Era. You saved me when you had every reason not to. And I will never, never let anyone hurt you again. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. You can't promise that. I can, he said fiercely. And I will. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears she hadn't realized were falling. You are mine, Era Coldwell, my mate, my salvation. And I will burn this entire world to the ground before I let anyone take you from me. The bond flared between them, hot and undeniable. Era's breath caught. Evander's eyes darkened, his wolf rising to the surface. Tell me to stop, he whispered, his lips hovering just above hers. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away. She should have told him to stop. This was too fast, too intense, too much. But she didn't. Instead, she rose on her toes and closed the distance between them. The kiss was fire. Evander groaned, his hands tangling in her hair as he deepened the kiss, claiming her mouth with a hunger that stole her breath. Era's back hit the wall, and she didn't care. She wanted this, wanted him, every broken, dangerous, beautiful piece of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evander rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he whispered. Yours, she agreed. And in that moment, Era Coldwell stopped running. Morning came too soon. Era woke to find Evander already awake, sitting by the window, watching the sunrise. He was still shirtless, the borrowed jacket discarded on the floor. She could see the scars that marked his body, evidence of battles fought and survived. We leave in an hour, he said without turning around. Where are we going? Seattle, the safe house. From there we plan. Plan what? War, he said simply. He turned to look at her, his violet eyes burning with purpose. Dexton took my throne. He tried to kill me, and he will pay for every second of suffering he caused. Era sat up, pulling the thin blanket around herself. And what about me? She asked quietly. What role do I play in your war? Evander crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside the bed, taking her hands in his. You are not a weapon, Era. You are my heart. And when this is over, when Dexton is dead and my throne is reclaimed, I will give you the life you deserve. A home, a pack, safety, freedom? She asked. He smiled. Always. They left the motel as the sun climbed higher, the convoy moving swiftly through back roads. Era watched the landscape change from frozen wilderness to dense forests to the outskirts of civilization. It felt surreal. Days ago, she'd been alone in a cabin, convinced she'd die there. Now she was riding beside an Alpha Prime, heading into a war she didn't ask for but couldn't escape. Brock's voice crackled over the radio. Alpha, we've got movement. 2 vehicles, half a mile back. Looks like a tail. Evander's expression hardened. Lose them. Copy that. The convoy sped up, weaving through narrow roads with precision, but the tail stayed with them. They're persistent, Brock muttered. Evander leaned forward, his eyes scanning the road ahead. There, he said, pointing to a sharp turn. Take it. Hard. Brock didn't hesitate. The SUV screeched around the corner, and the other vehicles followed suit. The tail tried to keep up but lost control, spinning out into a ditch. Era exhaled, her knuckles white from gripping the seat. "Close," she breathed. "Too close," Evander agreed. He pulled her against him, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. "We're almost there," he murmured. "Just hold on a little longer." The safe house was a fortress, hidden deep in the industrial district of Seattle. It looked like an abandoned warehouse from the outside. Inside, it was state-of-the-art. Armed guards, surveillance systems, reinforced walls. Evander's loyalists had been preparing for his return. When they entered, a woman with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair stepped forward. "Alpha," she said, bowing her head. "Welcome back." "Lyra," Evander acknowledged. "Status report. Dexton has fortified the Onyx Citadel. He's consolidated power among the inner circle, eliminated dissenters, and declared you dead. The packs are divided. Some believe him. Others are waiting for proof." "Then we give them proof," Evander said coldly. He turned to Era. "This is Ira Coldwell, my mate. She is to be protected at all costs." Lyra's eyes widened, but she bowed immediately. "Of course, Alpha." Era felt the weight of every gaze in the room. She was no longer invisible. She was the alpha female of the Onyx Dominion, and the war for the throne had just begun. If this story has taken you on a ride, if you've felt every moment with Era and Evander, then I need you to do something for me. Please, hit that subscribe button for Liana's Moonshadow Tale. I'm working toward 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Like, comment, share this story with someone who loves a good romance with teeth, because what comes next is going to change everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling this with me. Now, let's finish this. The rejection was over. The war had begun. And Era Coldwell, the Omega who had survived alone in the frozen wilderness, was about to discover just how strong she really was. Because when Evander Crownheart reclaimed his throne, she would stand beside him, not as a victim, not as a trophy, but as his equal, his mate, his queen. And anyone who stood in their way would learn what it meant to face the wrath of the Wolf Eater and the woman who saved him. The end of the beginning. If you want to see episode 2, The First Blood Hunt, let me know in the comments. This is just the start of Era and Evander's story. And trust me, it only gets more intense from here.